Okay, so here we are. We've gone ahead and pulled the bed off. There's the bed. First we pulled the tailgate off. He's there. Just keep in mind that tailgate is a little heavy for one guy, and the old F-150s used to have a round piece right here, made it easier to get out. These are notched, so it's a little bit more difficult. Another thing we did is we had to take this bed liner and cut the bed liner around these bolts. Now keep in mind that the washer that's on these bolts does not come off of the bolt, so you have to cut around the washer if you want the bolts all the way out. I didn't realize that till I pulled out the last one over there and got a look at it. But if you don't do that underneath, the bolts will stick out. I'm going to try and set them on the crates there, but if not, I'm going to have to carve out the washers as well, which I'll probably have to do anyways because I may need to get new bolts. They were pretty tight, and the Torx on them look like they're pretty stripped out on several of them, so I may just get a kit of those to put back in it when I go back together with it. So yeah, we had to disconnect the tailgate. Has a connector on it, and I guess it's got a lock and some other things, so we had to disconnect that. We've disconnected the bumper stuff because we're gonna go ahead and pull the bumper off too, so went ahead and disconnected that. There is a ground wire here that goes to the bumper for the lights, I guess, so you gotta remember to remove that. That one sits on top of the, looking at it from underneath you don't see it, but it's sitting here on top, so you'll have to disconnect that, pull those plugs. Now one thing also to keep in mind is I always struggle with these darn things because you never know how they are supposed to unclick. On this one, it's just pushing the tab on the end. The ones that go to the wherever they are, oh yeah, they're on the tailgate. On those, these that go down here to the license plate lights, those there, you gotta push not on the end, you gotta push right next to the clip. So they're all different, and it's always a challenge to get those darn things loose. So just keep in mind that they're all different kinds. See, this one here is a little bit different than the others, but it also just, you know, you got to push on the end of the clip to get those out. The fuel hose just had 3 bolts here. They come out, and then there's a little clip that goes over the top of the inlet, and that you got to pop that little ring off, and then take these 3 out. And then this clamp here, there's a hose clamp here, you got to take it off because there's a little thing underneath the bed that is right up there, that clamp holds that hose up there, so be sure to take that off or else it won't come out of there. And then these are the aligning tabs, and I don't know if these things just weren't aligned too good, but these things, I'll be needing those for the other, to make sure we get those lined up as well. There's one on each side, there's one on that side and one on this side. And so before we keep going on this and pull the suspension off and everything else off, we're gonna need to get my pressure washer and wash all this mud off. It looks like this guy used to do a lot of off-roading. So every time I get under there and I'm taking something loose, I'm getting an eye full of dirt and stuff. So I'm gonna try and get as much of that mud off before I go under there to do the other. Now, I did hear or read that these cab mount bolts are are kind of a challenge sometimes because the nut on the inside may spin on you. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, because then we'll have to pull the seats out and pull up the carpet and put something on the other side to hold them. So I'm hoping to take it easy on those and not use my impact wrench until I get them loose before we pull those off. What else can I tell you right now? Let me see. So we got that off. Oh, this weight, for some reason, I saw this on the other frame, and I've seen it on all the F-150 frames. I don't know what it does, but this one seems to be all tore up. I think there's very little holding it still there, but you know, I don't know if it's for vibration or what it is, but it's there, so we'll just have to see. Might leave that there, might just try and find one at the junkyard, not sure, might have to buy a new one. I'm going to do some more research to determine what that is. Also, the other thing is it might be a little bit easier, especially since I used my engine hoist to pull that bed off, and I didn't get it quite centered. As you can tell, the weight is actually distributed a little bit further back. I tried to put it in the middle, but in the wheel well there area, but in reality I should have probably put it back a little further to get it balanced better. And in retrospect, I probably should have pulled the bumper off, would have probably made it easier, but I felt like getting the bed off would be easier to get the bumper off with the bed off. So we'll have to see if that works better. Going back, I'll probably not put the bumper on until I have the bed on the truck. But anyway, when you pull these three bolts out, you just pull the hose back through the rubber grommet that's over there on the bed. There's just a rubber grommet, and it pulls right through. See this little ring? There's this loose rubber grommet here, and it'll just pull through there. I'm gonna just put this right there so I don't forget where it's at, and close that. But you just pull that through there, and this is a challenge. I was thinking about taking this hose loose here and pulling this all the way out before pulling the bed off. It did make it a little challenging when coming off of there to get this all kind of out of there. Maybe if I have a better lift on it, more straight, it won't give me as hard of a time. But I'm thinking I might what I had to do is I had to fold these hoses over and this all the way down here before I could get it completely out, so it wouldn't be in the way. So maybe when I go back, I'll start it that way, and then I'll try and work this back in there, as it's a little tough where they put that hose clamp right up on top to try and get to that, or to get to this other one where it hooks up on the gas tank. So I don't know, we'll have to see. I'm gonna try and undo as little as possible so we don't have as much to put back together. So it's a little cloudy this afternoon, starting to cool off a little bit. I'm gonna try and get this this bed over there done, and then we'll try and get this washed off, and hopefully it'll be dry so that tomorrow I can get started on stuff underneath this thing. I'm gonna have to probably take a Sawzall and cut that piece up front that was damaged so that I can pull those off. I'm gonna try and pull these mounts off first, since there's where the damage is, so that I don't struggle with it later. I might take a Sawzall and just cut off that piece right there and try and get that bolt out of that mount there first, so there's no pressure on that. And maybe it'll make it easier to get this frame out of there with that. Now another thing is, I did use my impact wrench to try and get that bottom shield that skid plate off of there on the bottom, and there's some bolts in there. And you know, Ford uses these little clips now. They don't weld the bolts on or nuts on anymore. They just use those clips, and those clips just hold the nuts in place, but you know, they're not welded on to them. So if you use an impact wrench, it'll just break those nuts loose, and then you can't get them out. And those that are inside the frame, there's no way of getting to the back of them to get the bolts loose. So what I'm gonna have to do is probably, when I get this frame down, I'm gonna have to cut some holes in it to be able to get a socket in there. I think that's what Ford was calling for, to get a socket in there to be able to hold the nut while you take the bolts off. That was a cheesy way of doing that. But anyway, so be careful on all of these clips. It's probably easier to go ahead and make sure that you lubricate them well, and that you use just a regular ratchet, not an impact, to pull them off. And then until you get them going or get them loose, and then you can maybe use your impact on them. That's why on the back ones, those Torx bolts strip pretty easy. So I would suggest to use the ratchet like I did to loosen them, and then use the impact to get them out. Otherwise, I'd have probably stripped all of those before getting them out. So that's just a lesson I learned on the front, and I'm applying it everywhere on this Ford, because that's how all of these nuts are. You know, I had said that we probably just wanted to do the frame swap first, but after I looked at it a little bit, I pulled off the radiator, the condenser, and all the stuff out front. And just looking at how this sets, these bushings right in here, they set up against the frame. So if I'm going to change this piece that's damaged right in here, see, I had to cut that loose so that I could get this lined up. If I'm gonna get that piece off right there, I need to get that back on there before we get the frame back in there. And then the frame will help us line everything up. Otherwise, we gotta lift the cab to be able to get that piece out of there. So what I'm looking at doing, and what I did, is I went ahead and took all that stuff off the front, the headlights, and all of the stuff up front, and started to straighten it. And I got it pretty close, but I'm gonna wait until I get this piece, you know, right here, get it back in here so that I can line things up. And then once we get the new frame in there, I'll know exactly where it needs to be correct. Then I can start to straighten whatever I need to straighten it and get it lined up. As you can see, it looks like this guy was in some deep mud or something. There's sand and mud everywhere in this thing. He might have been in too deep or something. But yeah, so we didn't proceed with dropping the frame just yet. We are going to get to that. What we did do is we did have an opportunity, and I got the pipe that I got to build the A-frame or H-frame or whatever you want to call it. I went ahead and built those here, and you can see there's a thing up here. I put some gussets in there, comes across, goes there, comes down here, and I put some supports there. So those are T-frames here, and then the top, you know, H-frame on top. So basically it's kind of like an A-frame, I guess, but what I did was just take one section of pipe out here in the oil field. I think it's like $1 a foot or so, and just cut up the pieces. Got a little short pieces of pipe that's just a little bigger, so the other pipe pulls into it, and we drilled some holes down here and up here through the pipe so that we can bolt it up and make sure that this thing holds. I don't know if you can see that, but see, we've got that bolted together. So when we're all said and done here, we'll just unbolt that and take this apart. We can store it and use it whenever we need it again. Could be used to pull engines or what have you if you needed to, I guess. But I got my cherry picker for that. But in this particular case, can't have the cherry picker because we can't have anything in the way down here on the bottom, you know, in the front or on the bottom when we go to pull that frame out from under there. We go to pull that frame out, we can't have anything here at all. So that A-frame is going to go over the top, it's going to come around, and it's going to come down the other side right here, and then we'll support the engine. We'll just grab it like this, hold it up, and then we'll drop the frame from here. We'll drop it down, and I'll just go boop down on the ground. We'll remove the shocks, coilovers off of here so that it'll collapse the suspension all the way down. And so then we'll just drop the frame as low as it'll go, and we'll just drag it out, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, that's where we are on this right now. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode. So please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. You know, if you like it, leave some comments. Appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for watching. Bye.